Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, unranked in the eyes of Twitch metrics, but number one in your heart. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and shall we get started? No, because I have a brief announcement for all of you. It's important, it's game-changing, okay, I'm being non-committal, but next week, Coffee with Soul will be here on YouTube on this very channel. You might have heard that Twitch is in a bit of a pickle after a massive hack with gigabytes of its data out in the wild, and it's got me, slightly uncomfortable to the point where I've been asking myself, so how's YouTube streaming these days, huh? We're going to find out together, so join me on the usual days, on the usual hour, just a little bit closer to home. Now let's get to the news, to which there is not much, but there's still a lot to discuss. A new PTR build dropped this week with no change in emotes or jokes or paintings, at least none that we know about, but there is a small change to the upcoming Mythic Plus feature for Legion Timewalking, and it includes changes to the tanking side of things, nerfing effects and abilities that require timing your active mitigation. Otherwise, you take extra damage, you get knocked back, that sort of thing. In a post, they said, "We're not looking to drastically change the feel of dungeons or available strategies, but we're open to changing some things to better match modern player expectations or improve the feel of the dungeon, such as active mitigation mechanics." But the bigger change was a clarification from the WoW team that Azeroth gear and essences functioning in these dungeons was a bug, meaning it looks like it's not going to be a thing in that feature, which puts into question whether or not it'll be usable for the Mage Tower challenges. I hope to find out in a future build, but for now, let's talk dungeons. Normally, we're used to Timewalking allowing us to bring in our old gear, if it works at least, and use it to trivialize content, aka making it fun. Right now, the Heart of Azeroth works in Timewalking and in pretty much any content outside of Shadowlands, with sometimes hilarious effects. But Mythic Plus Timewalking is new, and it's very different from the normal Timewalking dungeons we're used to. That's because during this event, completing dungeons will reward loot of the same item level as Shadowlands Mythic Plus dungeons and count towards weekly Great Vault reward options. Meaning, if you complete a 15 Black Rook hold, you'll get an item level 252 piece of gear in next week's vault. It's not going to be loot from Legion, but it's basically means that during a Timewalking week, your options for pushing keys go up. Having the Heart of Azeroth doesn't mean a night and day difference in performance, but it is a measurable advantage that not all of our characters have full access to. The reaction to this news is, like all WoW-related news, split between a few camps. Some players are upset that the hard work that they put into powering up their essences can't be celebrated during Legion Timewalking. Like, if it's usable in regular Timewalking dungeons and content outside of Shadowlands, what's the big deal? Presently, it's a one-week event, which, at the current Timewalking schedule, is going to take place at most twice in an entire season. And this leads to an even bigger outcry from players who've pointed out time and time again that Blizzard tends to make our efforts feel irrelevant through massive catch-ups and deactivating features, disabling set bonuses, and more. This furthers the narrative that Blizzard does not care about its past content. Meanwhile, we have another camp of players who are glad for this move, because if we could use our Heart of Azeroth, that might feel great for our characters who put the time into it, but what about the players and the characters who did not do the BFA? What about good old Unfriendliness? Players have been clamoring for the Timewalking schedule to be shortened from the 3 to 4 week gap that it is right now to a 1 per week rotation, which would make Mythic Plus Timewalking that much more impactful in a season and making the Heart of Azeroth feel quite a bit more significant. And just like the other side, this gets into an even bigger argument of, again, Unfriendliness. There's been plenty of bitching going on even right now, with powering up conduits, completing the campaign, obtaining legendaries and shards and socketed gear and embers and so on. Like, you're telling me that to best prepare my character to make sure I get into a group for this Legion Timewalking doohickey, I might have to go back to old expansion content and do the Nazjatar bodyguard grind or win a PvP island expedition. And I want to point out that this Timewalking event can potentially award max item level gear whenever it's in town. This is a very powerful holiday, so we've got to consider player behavior if older gear worked here. For the cost of a high item level neck, we get the benefits of the freaking Heart of Azeroth. So, depending on your spec, this is an extra cheat death effect, or the use of a PvP talent, or the random activation of a major cooldown, so it wouldn't surprise me at the slightest if group leaders in this situation would heavily favor players with a heart and essences. That's where we're at right now, but this also opens up a very interesting discussion, and guess what? You're invited! There have been more than a few debates over whether features like the Legion artifacts, or the Heart of Azeroth, or corruption should have stayed in the game and persist to this day. Sorry, Netherlight Crucible, I don't think anyone misses you. But there are also debates over alt-friendliness, and the notion of having to go back to previous expansion content to power up like the blood of the enemy, or to farm for a Twilight Devastation enchant. That thought kind of has me in a bit of a twist. This makes me understand just a little bit more why the developers go the borrowed power route, knowing that they can go nuts because it's not going to follow us later. But I still have some deep disagreements with the approach as well that you've heard from me many times before. For now though, I want to know where you stand here. Is there a happy medium here? I'd love to hear from you. Like I said, this PTR build is light, with a few follow-up changes that make Nightborn look less angry, aka less like Night Elves, and they get glowy hands. Good luck with them Nightborn rogues. There are a few pending changes coming to monks that make it seem like buffs are coming, and the Torghast leveling experience has been improved. There are features that have yet to be tested, notably the time-walking version of the Mage Tower. The most current patch notes still say that this feature will be available in a later PTR build, presumably to test. Apart from that, it seems as if this patch is getting pretty close to being feature complete, and the amount of changes is extensive. Really, go check the link to the patch notes below in the video description. It even contains each of the development notes from week to week, and if nothing else, I've got to appreciate that Blizzard's done a much better job at communicating these changes and their intentions, even if it invited a healthy dose of backlash. Folks around the internet have been feeling this similar vibe that with less to update, maybe the patch will come soon, but when? I've been going back and forth on my guesses, and right now at least, I'm thinking between October 26th and November 2nd, because it just feels reasonable. By this time, the latest Mythic Dungeon International will be wrapping up. More importantly, Renown 80 will be accessible for all players by this time, and hitting this milestone one time will enable a ton of quality of life perks after the patch. I feel it most appropriate that the closest date of this patch should be like the 26th, giving people 1 week to hit Renown 80, and then when the patch drops, they can log in and immediately start gallivanting around between all the covenants. 9.15 is the sort of patch that I think is in Blizzard's best interest to launch sooner rather than later. Surprise, surprise. Legion Timewalking features can be tested and tuned in the background while players enjoy the quality of life perks and changes first. Reasonably, this will give some players more time to enjoy themselves before jetting off to check out maybe the upcoming Endwalker expansion for Final Fantasy XIV, which I'll be joining in on when not doing WoW stuff. Traitor. This also has me thinking, and I'd like your thoughts as well. Like, some of what's coming in this patch is usually the sort of stuff that we see later in an expansion. You know, the freeing up of things that we'd like to actually see at the start of an expansion. So don't get me wrong, these are all good things, but it makes me wonder about patch 9.2. Let's throw up some dates. Obviously, the development of Shadowlands has been pretty haphazard for numerous reasons that fewer and fewer fans are willing to accept. Patch 9.1 launched on June 29th and 30th, meaning that if my predictions are true, we're looking at a 17 or 18 week patch. This puts Shadowlands back on a path towards a Battle for Azeroth-like release cadence, but let's not forget that Shadowlands started with a 0.5 patch that had very little content in it, and really there's no making up for that. The thought comes to mind, and this is 100% headcanon, that maybe some of what we're seeing in 9.15 was originally planned for 9.2. I'm talking about the quality of life features, even maybe addressing the AoE cap, which feels like a pretty big change to make in the middle of a season. Could this mean that behind closed doors, Blizzard's like grinding and powering through to bring 9.2 a little bit sooner than expected, as in a more palatable 3-month wait between patches and not 4.5? And I have to admit, that's a stretch, even for me, easily like a 7 out of 10 on the Shilometer. Patent pending. But it sounds plausible. Less content and more fixes in the 0.5 patch, less fixes and more content in the 0.1 patch. Let's get cynical too, I mean, it's only fair. Blizzard themselves said that patch 9.1 was 100% developed under work-from-home conditions, and it took this long, 218 days, for the patch since Shadowlands launch. Now let's assume that the WoW team is kind of sort of hitting a stride after being used to working from home, but let's also assume that the Blizzard lawsuit is going to affect timelines as well. It stands to reason that 9.2 will have the same wait time as the 9.15 patch, 4 months, which actually puts us close to the release date of the new Sylvanas book. Now let's talk about that for a second. Its original release date was set for November 9th, but was pushed back a full 15 weeks to February 22nd. That's 105 days. That's roughly the same amount of time between patches during Battle for Azeroth. This isn't proof at all, but it strongly suggests that the timing of the book release has a lot to do with the 9.2 patch. The question then is, what is in this book? Is it a story meant to take place before or after the events of patch 9.2? This could be a very meticulously timed epilogue for the Banshee Queen, meaning 9.2 might come sooner. It could be the prologue to her final act in the Warcraft story, meaning 9.2 could be pushed even further back than we anticipate. It's more than likely though that I have no idea what I'm talking about, and who knows what's gonna happen. Fortunately though, no matter how it goes, we're going to be in an era where WoW's content is much more accessible with plenty to farm for. And like it or not, there are other games to play and enjoy and of course talk smack about. World of Warcraft might appear to incentivize maintaining a constant, never-ending subscription, but, and you're hearing this from a shill, you don't have to, and you never did. Except during the days of old school Valor and Justice Points. Oh man, you were behind, you were behind. When it's all said and done, past the speculating and the shilling and the doomsaying are just games to play. I know I get caught up in the energy myself sometimes, and really I just want to have fun and share these moments with you and be the center of attention and get paid. Way to end the show, genius, and I do hope that you join me for our YouTube streams next week. A spattering of you have been enjoying the VODs on the other channel, so please don't forget to subscribe to that channel to feed the algorithm gods, and, so you don't miss out. Folks over on Twitch, I'll only be gone for a week. Please don't worry your heads off. Fellow patrons, I want to thank you for the continued support, including Drixie, Eric, and to Craig for stepping it up.
Reading your names gives me strength.
And of course, a thanks to all of you for making it to the end. Next week is gonna be a trip, and I will see you there. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.